Hi, this is Kevin Crimin, aka Rogue Deckbuilder from YouTube, and I will be competing in my very first Pro Tour. Alright, the deck that I chose to play at my first Pro Tour is Naya Aggro, which is red, white, green aggro. And it is only containing cards. This Pro Tour is Return to Ravnica block constructed, which is Return to Ravnica, Gate Crash, and Dragon's Maze. How I got to the Pro Tour is I won Pro Tour qualifier Salt Lake City with Soul Sisters. And in fact, I didn't even expect to play in the Pro Tour qualifier. It happened to be on the same day game day was. And the store was only a block and a half away from my house. And I was already there, already out of Modern deck, and thought I might as well play. I ended up playing the Naya Aggro deck because, as I said before, there's not a lot of data out there for this block constructed. It's not a very popular format. It is fairly popular on MTGO, but with Dragon's Maze only being, I think, a week into MTGO, there's not a lot of data for the tournaments. So I scoured a bunch of the decks that had been finishing well, and I thought I'd put a spin on one of the green-white shell decks that uses powerful cards like Loxodon Smiter and Voice of Resurgence, and I really like Warleader's Helix. Technically this is my brew. It's a spin off another brew, but it is originally my brew. I haven't seen anyone else play this exact list yet. I tried to build a deck that has a good matchup versus the top 1, 2, and 3 decks, and I thought that Naya was very well positioned to do that. And the top 3 decks, in my opinion, that I expect to see the most of are green-black mid-range, which utilizes cards like Vraska, the Unseen, and Lotleth Troll, and Dreg Mingler. The other deck that's been around for a while is the blue-white different shells, and I expect red to be the third color that they splash, with Ral Zarek and other cards like Warleader's Helix. And it also runs cards like Supreme Verdict and Detention Sphere, so this deck is built to beat those cards specifically. And the third deck that I expect to play against is Red Deck Wins, which has had a huge showing on MTGO. It utilizes fast cards like Legion's Loyalist, Ash Zealot, and Boros Reckoner. And the Naya mid-range / aggro, is I guess what you call the deck I'm playing, goes over the top of that. I'm outclassing their creatures every turn. First turn they're dropping a 1/1, first turn I'm dropping a 1/1 that evolves, second turn they're dropping a 2/2, second turn I'm dropping a 3/3, and so forth. So I think that Naya Aggro is the deck that is best positioned to take this tournament. The sideboard was specifically chosen for the UWR matchup. It has a lot of cards that is just trump cards against them, like Frontline Medic and Skullcrack. Skullcrack negates the life gain from the Sphinx's Revelation, and Frontline Medic can actually count as they have to play around it. They at least have to have 3 mana open to cast their Sphinx's Revelation. And it also is a very powerful card in and of itself. It's a 3 for 3/3. It's a beatdown type card. It can make your guys indestructible for any sort of trick that they may have. A very good card. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the cards I've chosen in my sideboard. I think it's very well positioned for the meta. It has answers for all of the powerful cards, and I think that if I play it right, that I can go very far. The reason why I chose this deck is all the cards in this deck are very value-based. There's very big creatures that are bigger than they are supposed to be. There's direct damage. There is answers for every card in the format, and because of this combination, I expect to do very well at this tournament. So day 1 at the Pro Tour, we started with draft, and I was more than tickled to first pick Ral Zarek, followed by a Flux Charger. So the pack was going great, but then soon dried out, and I had to pick up some Clue Stones and some subpar removal. But I had my colors pretty much figured out with Ral Zarek and Flux Charger. It was a good baseline, as Izzet is usually wide open, and it splashes well with Rakdos and Dimir. Second pack with the Dragon's Maze, I opened a Duskmantle Seer, which was perfect with the strategy, and now I was set on going a more aggressive strategy. Unfortunately, with this pack as well, I was open just some subpar guys and 2 Balustrade Spies. I also got a Dimir Charm for control, and the deck was starting to build itself. And I opened a Splatter Thug, a Hellhole Flailer, a Rakdos Keyrune, an Annihilating Fire, and Electricity and 2 Dispels, which really just rounded out my deck. I had all the answers to their removal, had a removal of my own, plus a bunch of aggressive creatures and the Rakdos key rune being able to both fix and be a 3/1 first striker. In round number 1 of the draft, I went up against another new player, his very first Pro Tour from China, and he was playing Naya midrange, which was a pretty bad matchup for me because he had cards like Centaur Healer and Ghor-Clan Rampager, and to make matters worse, I did mulligan one of the games and got stuck on 2 lands the other game, and it was just a blowout. It wasn't even much of a game. He beat me before I even knew what happened, and there I was stuck being frustrated with an 0-2 loss in my very first Pro Tour. However, I was able to redeem myself in the second round. I was going up against an Orzhov Weenie deck where he was very aggressive on game number 1, playing a first turn Boros Elite into a second turn Daring Skyjack, into a third turn Azorius Arrestor, detaining my guy, swinging in for more damage, and then he continued that until I was able to top deck into an Electrickery and wipe his board, and made short work of him in a few turns later. The next game, it was all Ral Zarek. I got out an early Ral Zarek, and it completely decimated his weenies. Also, the Flux Charger was on board to block any one of his weenies. In round 3, I was super excited to be playing against Junya Inaga, my first pro player that I was ever played against. And I was very excited because I think I outplayed him, in my own opinion. The first game, we both had a 2/2 on board, but mine was a Stealer's a Secret, and his was a creature that pumped every time he cast a creature spell. And I think he was trying to outrace me, so he didn't care about the card advantage that the Stealer's Seeker might get. And also I was leaving up mana every time I'd attack into it. So he chose not to block the first time and then decided to attack with his guy the second time. And then I was able to drop a Duskmantle Seer, and he was too far behind with the card advantage that I had. So it was a very easy match after that Duskmantle Seer came out and made short work of him. On game number 2, it was another exciting match. At one point, he had 7 cards in hand and was at 11 when he stabilized, and Toil and Trouble was enough for the win. So it was kind of cool that I made the right plays against my very first pro match, and like I said, kind of outplay him. In round number 4, we finally got to play Block Constructed, which I was excited to be playing the deck that I worked so hard on. And to my surprise, I was matched up against Hall of Famer Shuhei Nakamura, who was playing the Channel Fireball deck built by Brian Kibler that was junk. And what it used is Sin Collector and Lotlet Trolls, Loxodon Smiters, just a lot of value creatures. And I really got to see the power of Sin Collector, as every time he cast it, he was able to get an Advent of the Wurm and exile it from my hand. He definitely is a Hall of Famer because he's a very smart player. He was very smart in which he always kept his Lotlet Trolls at 4 power, so I couldn't exile them with Selesnya Charm, and he just waited the game out until he knew he could remove enough of my creatures and just get in there each turn with a Lotlet Troll. On match number 2, I went up against another Japanese player who it also was his first Pro Tour, and he was playing a rogue deck. He was playing the Whispering Madness and Notion Thief combination, which means when you cast those two together, I do not get to draw any cards off of Whispering Madness, and he gets to draw all the cards I would have drawn. And both games, he was lucky enough to get the combo off very early, and I stumbled both games, I believe. In game number 1, I didn't get a green source, and in game number 2, I didn't get a red source until it was too late. In match number 3, I went up against a Jund aggro deck, and this deck was playing cards like Blood Witch and Varls, and Lotlet Troll and Drag Mangler, but my Rootborn Defenses were way too much for him to handle, as I was usually able to either populate a 3/3 Centaur or a 5/5 Wurm, and just overwhelmed him with the populate. On the next match, I went up against Selesnya aggro, and the first game was very unfortunate. Had to mold a 5 and then drew into 6 lands, and it was very easy for him with his Loxodon Smiters just to kill me before I could stabilize, so I lost that match 0-2. In the final match of day number 1, Block Constructed, I went up against another Selesnya aggro deck, and this deck was exactly the same as the match I had just played. In the second game, we both mulled down to 5, but my 5 was a lot better than his, as I had 3 lands, a Smiter, and a Boros Reckoner, and he stumbled on 1 and 2 lands and didn't get his 3rd land out until I was able to beat him down with the Boros Reckoner and Loxodon Smiter. All right, we're back in the hotel room after a grueling day one. Ended up going a 4-4, 2-1 in the draft portion and 2-3 in the block constructed. Pretty tired after playing a few pros and playing some other grindy mirror matches, so ready to hit the bed. But I'm excited. Did make day 2. 4-4 finishes, good enough to go to day 2. So yeah, thumbs up for that.
Good morning, competitors. Welcome to day 2 of Pro Tour Dragon's Maze. Good luck today. Hand you off to Gavin Dugan, who will be calling the draft this morning. Thank you.
So on day number 2, I was excited to be doing draft again, as I had done so well in day number 1. But this time the pool of cards was incredibly weak, and I didn't open a bomb like I did on day number 1. In fact, my deck was very, very bad. They were so bad that I ended up 4th picking a Batterhorn. And I remember in the Ravnica pack there was 2 Firemine Foresights in the search for the city going around. So I was barely able to even put together a Naya mid-range deck that was very clunky with 1, 2, 3s, 4s, 5s, and even 6 drops. And I didn't have enough ramp between my 1 of Cluestone and my 1 of Keyrune to really get to that 6 mana that I needed to cast my biggies. Too good?
Yep, I roll. 6.
All right, let's do this again. There we go.
I'll be on the play.
Okay. Match number 1 wasn't very exciting. I was playing against Gruul aggro, and he was sitting to my left, so we both did a good job of cutting each other out of those colors. Both our decks were weak, but on game number 1, I got stuck on 2 lands, never saw a third, never was able to cast my Cluestone or Keyrune, which was in my hand, and he crushed me. In game 2, I kept a hand with Electrickery, 4 lands, a Keyrune, and Gruul War Chant. I did see a bunch of 2-1s in the first game, so I thought that, hey, I could just wipe his board with Electrickery. But this game, however, he just cast a bunch of beaters, and I never drew into a creature, and he made short work of me. In match number 2, I was matched up against Rakdos aggro, which was another horrible matchup for me, as I had a bunch of 5 and 6 drops, and he killed me, I believe, on turn 4 and 5 both games. Not much of a match. I was very frustrated by this point, already starting to go on tilt, basically eliminated from any sort of prize or any sort of Pro Tour invite. And lo and behold, I was matched up against Junia again, and this time he was able to get his revenge on me. We both got stuck on 2 lands the first game, but he was able to put out some early creatures, and I never saw the 3rd land. He eventually got into his 3rd and 4th land and beat me down. In the second game against Junia, he mulled down to 4, and I sided in the Naturalizes because he was playing a 5-color deck with a bunch of Cluestones and a bunch of Keyrunes. And I was able to naturalize one of his Keyrunes, and he just scooped after that. In game number 3, we both mulled to 6, and I was able to have a quick start against him with the Viashinos, got him down to a 1 before he was able to clear the board, and we were both down to no cards, and I proceeded to draw into 6 lands where he drew answer after answer after answer. All I needed was basically any creature or any direct damage out of my deck, and I would have beat him, but nope, the 6 lands, he was able to recover and beat me. So Junia was able to get his revenge. After going 0-3 in the draft portion, we moved on to block constructed, and I'm not going to talk much about it, but it involved a lot of mulligans, a lot of mana screw, and me on tilt and very frustrated. I started misplaying a lot because of the frustration. I guess this is one lesson I can take away from this, is that the Pro Tour is very grueling. It takes a lot of mental energy, takes a lot of resilience, and I just couldn't grasp that. I couldn't just step back and regather myself and go into day 2 after going 0-3 and try to recover what little hope I had of being in the top 100 or in the money. And I let it get to me, and like I said, it just led to a lot of misplays and even more frustrated. So day 2 didn't quite go my way at the Pro Tour. I kind of choked out there at the end. Hopefully next time I'll be better prepared and up to the competition. And now it's time for me to catch one of those sailboats and sail back to the Great Salt Lake.